And welcome back to this Monday edition of InfoWars Nightly News. I want to thank the crew for the earlier news portion of the transmission. Now, this guest was my idea. I'm going to be quite frank with you. I live in Tornado Alley that runs down from the top of the Midwest right down to Austin, Texas, where hundreds of people are killed every year from tornadoes. That's why I started looking into underground shelters. Not because I live in fear, but because I try to live empowered. I don't want to live in fear. I want to live prepared, which is basically the motto of our guest. And so I started researching who's got the best and the longest continually operating underground shelter that I can bury here in the hard dirt of Texas. And they've got all different sizes. So I thought, hey, I'm trying to figure out what I want to get. Why not actually get this guy on the TV show? And he's not a sponsor yet. We hope to get him a sponsor down the road. But I'm literally pretty much sure now. In fact, he's coming to town in a few weeks. I'm going to get one of these. He's sold, I guess, thousands of these things, different variants of them, hundreds just in the last few years of different underground shelters. Now, government has underground bunkers. Corporations have them. Switzerland has them for their entire population, stocked with weapons and food for years. The Russians have them. But in the U.S., we spend more on continuity of government than all other governments combined, just like defense. 54% last time I checked, you can pull this up, of all global defense spending. In fact, folks, show a graph of, just showing people, I'm not making that up, of U.S. defense spending. Share of global defense, U.S. defense spending, worldwide average. It's like 54% last time I checked a few months ago. The point is, none of that is for you. I grew up in Dallas, and we'd be in a parking garage, and my dad would say, hey, look, son, it says nuclear fallout shelter. We're supposed to go in here and die during a nuclear war with all the military bases around Dallas. And so, again, even if there's a 10% chance there'll be a tornado in my area, or a 10% chance there's going to be a bioweapons release, here in Austin, there isn't one. There's two different nuclear reactors, experimental type. So this is the type of issue that we're dealing with. Yeah, and they found a graph there. That's a different breakdown of it. But of a total worldwide spending of $1,735, the United States is 710, so that number's a little less than half from the numbers I've seen. It says 41%. Regardless, the U.S. has the biggest defense budget in the world, and close to half of it, some numbers say more than half. And there's nothing for preparedness. So I got storable food, I got guns, I got Pro-Pure water filters, because if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, for economic reasons, bioweapons, radiological, tornadoes, I've been out at families' houses, one time in Llano when a tornado was coming through, and I went down in their old storm cellar that had been built, in the 20s, and there were big old fat, spiders in there. It was leaky. If that tornado was to come by, I didn't feel very secure. So I've looked into these types, even with hard dirt. I'm now ranting about it. I have the guest on here, and I'm ranting. I do that. It's kind of data, download. These are the types that you can just bury. And it's the types that have the escape hatch, all of it. So I thought I would discuss why we believe people should get prepared, and we should talk to the leading guy. He popularized and led the nation. I did a lot of research before I went to this company to create the first steel doors. In fact, you guys have a shot of that, don't you? Or to popularize, the beautiful carved big iron doors that you see on so many houses. We'll show that to you in a moment. You see those on all the fancy houses. And then he got into being the leader in different types of underground shelters, and so he can basically break this down for us today. He's Ron Hubbard of Atlas Shelters, atlassurvivalshelters.com, hubbardirondoors.com. And he's operation based in Los Angeles. He's from Texas, servicing the entire nation, 31 years as a steel fabricator, NOMMA award-winning projects, and he is on with us right now. And we should also add, well, it's a side issue, I'll get to a little bit later, that, again, I think this is extremely important. And I'm talking to my wife, she's like, what will the neighbors think? Plus, I live out in the country, but what will the neighbors think when we bury a shelter? Yeah, well, you know what? I don't care what the neighbors think. Okay, I'm sick of when there is tornadoes, we don't have a basement in our farmhouse. I'm tired of going to the bathroom. And what's cool about these shelters is these things are luxurious for a low price. But I'm not getting into a pitch here. He's not a sponsor. I just wanted to basically break all this down of why I think we should be prepared. Government's getting prepared and dug in, buying 1.6 billion bullets now. Why are we kooky when we try to buy a few thousand bullets? Ron, I'm ranting here, buddy. Correct me if I'm wrong on any point, because I move fast. I'm teleprompter free. Tell us about yourself, your company, why you got into this, and the real reason I got you on, buttering you up there, talking about your company. I know you want to talk about clients, but I've talked to Joel Skousen and others, and, you know, expert on safe homes and things. The elites, the rich people, the retired CIA agents, they're the ones getting the bunkers, but buried under their house. They don't even want people knowing they've had bunkers. So I want to talk about some of the intel you've got for us on that front.
Well, it's good to be with you, Alex. I appreciate it. You asked how I got into the shelter business. A few years back, some of my friends had concerns about what was going to be coming up in the future, being 2012 and beyond. And the writing was on the wall. And so I started looking around for a shelter for myself, and I went to the few people that there were in the country that were making them. It was pretty much just a hobby for them. There wasn't really anybody established that did it full time, other than government contractors that made multi-million-dollar shelters for the government. So I wanted a shelter that was comfortable, that wouldn't feel claustrophobic. I looked at the few that were out there, the yahoos that made them. They were characters. They didn't have the skills. You felt like you just might as well bury a pipe and crawl in a pipe. And I said, you know what? That's not what I want. I want a shelter that feels like home, that's comfortable, that's livable, that I could spend any amount of time I want to spend in it. I could use it as a hunting cabin for weekends. So I basically designed the shelter that I have today. And then there were features that I saw that I wanted that they didn't exist. One was an escape tunnel. I didn't want one way in and one way out. I wanted one way in and two ways out. I wanted the second way out to be a secret escape tunnel that was basically hidden yards away from my shelter, that I could pop my head up like a gopher. If somebody tried to attack my shelter, I could escape or defend my shelter. The other thing I wanted, that if somebody found my hatch and they knew that I was down there with the shelter, I wanted an airlock between my hatch and my shelter. So what I did is, on my bulkhead, I laser cut a door, and I have a decontamination room between my blast hatch and the door to the shelter. So when you come down the stairs, you enter into, like, basically the garage, into a house. Imagine you walk through your garage door, then you got to open the door to go into the house.
But isn't that really good for security? In case somebody came in, now you've got warning time, plus you can mount cameras and stuff outside.
I do got cameras, and if somebody finds my hatch, I close my door. It was laser cut. It was cut to 1/10,007 inch. I close it. It should be airtight. So if they drop gasoline, smoke, tear gas, they think they're going to get me out. Well, they've got bad news. What I'm going to do is, first I'm going to go to my VHF radio, which is a shortwave radio that I can call somebody directly. Hopefully I have one of my prepper buddies that would be in the ground. I'd call them to come help me out and get the guys off my hatch, deal with them. Or I'd wait till nightfall, and I would go ahead and release the sand in my escape hatch, prepare to pop my head up at night and defend myself or escape. So these are two things I really wanted. I just didn't want to be caught underground, smoked out of the ground. I wanted to basically have a shelter that was also a fortress and defendable. And that's what I've achieved, and people really love it.
Now, the deciding factor for me to, I mean, I intend to buy one of these, probably from you. We've just been talking the last few weeks, and you're talking about actually, I guess, coming to town. We'll even film, you know, it being installed. I think about the tornado issue. I mean, I know the whole country doesn't face that, but, I mean, this is a great storm cellar as well. And then, you know, it's also something good to have if you live in the country, hidden away from your house on the back 40, that you can have a lot of your survival goods in, so all your eggs aren't just in your house.
Well, let me explain to you. There's few different types of shelters. What you're describing as a tornado shelter is what I call a backyard bunker. A lot of people have what's called tornado shelters. Tornadoes come in, they run to the backyard, they go down there, tornado passes, they come out, but it's not livable. What I've done is I've made it livable. So you can actually go down there and spend the night in your tornado shelter. My backyard bunker, which is around $30,000, has 4 beds. It's got a microwave, a TV, a couch, kitchen counters, water. You could go spend the night down there. But it's only 2 feet under the surface. So it's not really considered a blast-proof shelter. It's a good fallout shelter, and it's a good tornado shelter.
Sure. My point is that your bigger bunkers, they can double, though, as a tornado shelter.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, they're what's called an all-hazard shelter. All-hazard meaning tornadoes, hurricanes, wildfires, nuclear attack, biological attack, chemical attack, civil unrest, whatever.
Ron, let me just stop you for a moment and ask you this question. You heard my points about our government has the biggest continuity of government underground bunker program in the world. That's not debated. But then the government acts like we're kooky if we get prepared all these years. But suddenly they're saying we should get prepared. Why do you think they're now telling us to get prepared?
Because they're already prepared. Here a year ago, you couldn't even get your hands on the air filtration systems because the government was buying up everything that was on the market. Apparently, they're ready, and they're not buying anything right now. It's apparently people in high places know something that I don't and you don't, because the people that are buying shelters, I don't know if I should say this, but these people are coming to me, and they are wanting shelters, and these are people of power in high positions. And they basically say they want a shelter for their family because the government's not going to cover their family. And
well, you were even breaking down Israel's building a bunch and talking to you about mass producing, because it's obvious World War III type stuff. Most analysts say the Iran thing, if that happens, there's a good chance it could go into conflict with the Russians. Again, there's so many reasons. But look, you're not doing anything to your clients to just in general areas, because other preparedness people like Joel Skousen has, wrote the best-selling Secure Home book. He won't get into all of it, but he will say, yes, former top FBI, CIA, rich people, they're building entire complexes. They're as if, they're waiting for some calamity. I don't think it's all the 2012 stuff, but tell us about the type of folks that are coming to you and what you think's going on.
Well, I had an astrophysicist come in and get a shelter from me about 6 months ago. And he looked at me and he goes, "Do you know why you're building all these shelters?" And I said, "Well, why don't you tell me what you think?" Now, this was his theory. He says, every 26,300 years, our solar system basically drifts over to the edge of the galaxy. And when that happens, it causes our sun to get off kilter. And it's like a little top that spins perfectly. It will get a little wobbly. And that will cause our sun to emit solar flares and radiation. And that's what he honestly believes. He goes, this isn't a myth. This is just science that happens. And then we go back to normal. Now, we did start getting solar flares about 60 days ago. We had 2 solar flare showers. I don't think any power went out. But he honestly believes this is what's going to happen. Now, he says 0 could happen, or 98% of the people on Earth could die from the radiation. His concern was that would 10 foot of soil be enough dirt to protect him from what's coming?
Well, I was about to say, someone flying basically gets a chest X-ray above 35,000 feet in a standard daytime flight, because there's something like 10 feet of water in the atmosphere from 35,000 feet down to ground zero, down to sea level. And so the radiation is blocked out by that water, but when you're high altitude, you don't have it. Same thing for having dirt. That reportedly gives you, I guess, some shielding from radiation.
24 inches of dirt will protect you from 99% of gamma radiation. So 10 feet of dirt, which is what I put on my deep shelters, is more than enough.
What would you do in Texas? You were telling me that Austin area, I live outside Austin, is one of the worst areas for that. What would you do? Just haul in a bunch of dirt and rock, and then what, bury it, and then we put trees and stuff over and camouflage it?
Well, Austin's has got a lot of rock there, so we're going to have to blast if we go deep, if we're going to hit rock where you're at. But it depends on what the land is. If you have the land, let's say you have 500 acres and you like to deer hunt, it's nice to take my shelter, put it out there, and make it a second home or cabin. That's why I finish them out so nice. When you look at them, you don't feel like you're in a shelter, and it doesn't look like a shelter. It looks like a manufactured home just buried underground. You got high ceilings, 10 foot from wall to wall. You've got couches, big screen TVs. You got bunk beds. You got a master bedroom, refrigerator, TV. You got everything that a house has, and then some things. The only difference is this house is bomb-proof, and since it's 10 feet underground, you can maintain your climate control. You get below the thermal break. So if you got the land, I try to promote the people to just make the shelters as nice as possible and use them as a second home and cabin, and then let your kids grow up learning survival skills. Okay, that way, if the shelter doesn't save this generation's life, maybe it will save the next one, the next one. I tell a story that we buy life insurance. Now, how often do you get to play with your life insurance? Well, I've never played with my life insurance, but these shelters are almost like a life insurance policy that you get to touch and play with. They got a 200-year lifespan. It's not very often that you get to enjoy something that will save your life. But I'll tell you what, the people who get the shelters, this becomes their new hobby. You buy a boat, you take it to the lake, you use it. But when you have a shelter, you got a second home and you got some peace of mind that you've got a place that you can retreat to in case of any disaster that comes. So you're prepared. People talk about zombies. You know what? Well, you know who a zombie is? Right now, a zombie is you because you don't have a shelter. The people who have shelters are the ones that are calling everybody else a zombie. So if you don't have a shelter, you're basically a zombie. That's considered you're the Walking Dead. And
well, that's why Homeland Security, I'm sure you saw this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, is putting out ads now saying, get ready for zombie attack. And of course, that's a metaphor for all the welfare folks if society collapses. And that's what I'm really worried about is people ransacking through the countryside, burning and pillaging. How are we going to hide my shelter? I mean, how do you do it? Because I want mine concealed.
It is going to be concealed. No one's going to know it's there except you and the out-of-state person that's going to fly in, dig your hole, and put it in the ground in the middle of the night where nobody knows about it. You asked me a question earlier, what am I concerned of? Well, I'm not so concerned about nuclear missiles flying in, although the people in Israel are. I'm more worried about the guy down the street that's not prepared and has got a double-barrel shotgun is going to come knocking on my door wanting to get in and take my food. So that's what I'm more worried about. I'm worried about the infrastructure of the country breaking down, the power going out, and the people that are starving, you know, the walking dead. Coming to try to take what I've prepared for. That's what I'm really worried about. Now, there's a new show, I don't know if we can mention it, it's called Revolution. It just started the other night on TV, and I started watching it. It's basically a story about when the power goes out in the United States, and the show starts 15 years later, and I've been watching it. Now,
yeah, well, let me ask you this. Of course, you can talk about whatever you want, Bud. There's no, like, rules or scripting like most media. And of course, I should have added that you've done shipping wars, storage wars. You got a big episode of Doomsday Preppers coming out, a big episode of Dakota, the show I've been on, pretty good show overall compared to most mainstream media. Why do you think this is so hot in media right now? Because government's digging in, and then media is hyping the end of energy, the end of power, when the lights go out, revolution. It's everywhere. What's going on?
Well, somebody sure thinks something's going to happen. I can tell you that. I just hope nothing happens, but if it does, I'm prepared. But, oh, God, let's just hope nothing does happen.
But I was interrupting you about that show, Revolution. Continue.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the show Revolution, nobody has guns. So apparently before the lights go out in the show, the government came and took all the guns. So somehow the Second Amendment has been lost. I know we've kind of lost our First Amendment, the right to free speech, to protest when the Secret Service is present. I just hope we don't lose our right to the Second Amendment. But if people keep going around movie theaters and shooting people, you know, these liberals are going to try to take the guns too. What they should actually do is arm more people in the movie theater, so when one of those crazy kooks comes out there with a gun, somebody can pull out the gun and shoot the sucker instead of let him shoot everybody.
Well, I agree, Ron. And statistically, mass shootings in the last 20 years are not even up. They just hype the few events that happen like it's the end of the world to demonize our guns. Let's continue breaking down how you would conceal one of these, the different types and variants of shelters you've got. I know we were talking before about some of the bigger units if I want to get one that you are selling a lot of these right now, but that you are able to scale up. So break that down some more.
All right, the shelters are anywhere from 20 feet to 51 feet. The small ones in the 20, 25-foot range are what we call backyard bunkers. This is for people that don't have land, but they have a backyard. If you got a backyard, you can bury a shelter, okay? But if you got the land, you'll want to go to one of the bigger shelters and make it more like a second home or cabin. Prices, they can vary anywhere from $35,000 to a backyard bunker that is really a very decorated, glorified tornado shelter, up to $86,000 for my 51-foot model, which is 10-foot diameter, 51-foot long. It's called the Retreat. It has a private master bedroom. It's got a big den. It's got a big fancy fireplace. It's got a dinette table. Just like if you ever been into Denny's and you slid in the table, that's where I got the measurements from. So it's got a dinette in it. It's got a desk. It's 4 feet long. It's got a big entertainment center. Then you actually got guest quarters that have a door now that closes off. You have 6 bunk beds. Then you got a private bathroom at the end. So when you walk in the shelter, you're like, this is a bomb shelter. This is nicer than most houses I've been in. Well, this is the standard that I build the shelters to. When you walk in one, I wanted it to have the wow factor, and it does. You don't feel like you're in a bomb shelter. You feel like you're in a big RV, and it's, believe it or not, it's fun to be in one. It's not depressing. And I wanted to take...
Well, that's what you want. You don't want to just be down in some little thing with your family for 2 months if nukes go off or the local reactor blows up and they tell you it's safe and healthy for you. Describe the systems, the toilets, how it works, how long you can stay in these, the type of things that are in it. Because obviously, if something really bad happens, you want to be in a livable space, and that's why I'm looking at your systems.
Well, the upscale shelters, when you walk in them, they immediately on your left, you have what's called a marine grade flushing toilet. They have all the comforts of home, including bathtubs, hot water, master bedroom, private bunks with storage underneath. And what's really neat about my 10-foot diameter shelters is underneath the floor, which you got 3 feet of storage. You can get 55-gallon drums underneath the floor, so you can get enough food for everybody for up to a year underneath the floor. So you're not living in a square box container with boxes of food and water stored everywhere. You're actually living above ground. All the food is underneath your floor, and you don't feel like you're living in a pantry closet. So this is probably one of the most wonderful things about the shelter, that while you're in there, it's not claustrophobic. It's a lot of room. It's very, very spacious. It's very comfortable, and it's very neat. And if anybody gets on my website at atlassurvivalshelters.com and you take a look at, when you go on the website, click on NBC shelters, and it will bring up 6 categories. Click on where it says corrugated pipe are best. A lot of people get on my website and they don't know how to navigate it, but there's hundreds of pictures of my shelters on the website and how we dig the hole and put them in the ground.
Well, I was about to say, before we did the show today, I was trying to go over the site and get photos and things to show people, and it is labyrinth. I mean, that's what keeps leading me to you, because I've been researching this. My wife is like, man, Europe's imploding, all this stuff's going on. Even if it's a small chance, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. We looked at, we live 30 minutes outside town, but really, I've talked to experts like Joel Scows, and it's not in the real safe zone, in the real Texas Hill Country. It's on the edge of it. It's pretty close to a major road. It's a smaller piece of property, all we could afford. We could buy a little farm or ranch way out of town, as our real bug out, but then how do I know I could even get there? And it's sad we've got to talk about this point, but the government's gearing up for martial law. What are some of the other people that are buying shelters? I mean, it's obviously not just because of galactic realignments. I mean, it's military reasons. What are some of the government people and corporate people? What are the reasons they're buying these shelters from you?
They all have their independent reasons, and if you ask 6 people, I'm going to get 6 opinions. Some people believe it's the collapse of government. Other people believe that when the power goes down, the nuclear reactors are going to explode. Other people believe tariffs are going to come in. Some believe the Mayan calendar, which is actually, believe it or not, is very few. It's about 5% of people buy into the Mayan calendar deal. But it just so happens that the December 21st date is actually the winter solstice, and that is actually the date that the 26,300-year cycle of our solar system does go over to the edge of our galaxy. I actually Googled it and checked it out. I was like, well, hell, the guy's right. Now it got me scared about that. It's one more thing for me to worry about. But the people who are getting shelters, they're not crazy people. I can tell you that. They're just people that are concerned about their family. They're no crazier than a person who buys life insurance. They just want to make sure that their family is safe, and that if anything does happen and the ship hits the sand, that they have a place to retreat, they've got food, they've got water, and they've got that peace of mind. And then they try to get their friends in on it. One thing that I'm promoting right now is these prepper communities. I actually started my first one last month in Arizona, that if you buy a shelter from me, and you're basically, if you're in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, or Phoenix, I'll give you 10 acres in my prepper community. I can't tell you where it's at, but it is in Arizona. And then you have like-minded neighbors. Now, that's good to have neighbors, because you can have a doctor as a neighbor, you can have a mechanic as a neighbor, you can have an electrician.
And then you're around people that are tuned in and dialed in to what's happening. You know, it's funny. You just said this on air, but I've been thinking this. The reason it'd be good to have one of these shelters buried in a little piece of property I've gotten hidden is also it makes you get focused on the security and preparedness and becomes a focal point to train your children. Because, I mean, obviously, you've got the British military breakdown that they believe society is going to collapse. Guys, type in flash mobs, British government report. That should bring it up. Flash mobs and something British report. The Pentagon's reports, they all say the same thing. I'm not saying all this is going to happen. Government's saying it is, and they're digging in because they're engineering it under Agenda 21. They want the collapse of society to bring in a new dark age of control. I don't want that. I think we're going to stop them. But we need to fight for liberty offensively, I believe, with 70% of our energy. But we should also segue into this is going to happen with 30% of our energy, so we have two plans. Not just, hey, we're going to beat these people. Yeah, there it is. Revolution, flash mobs, and brain chips. A grim vision of the future, London Guardian. And it's the British report about total martial law takeover, collapse of society. Go ahead, sir.
You know, one thing I think back on, back in the 60s when everyone was putting these shelters in the ground, you look back now, those people weren't crazy. They were absolutely right. If we would have gone to nuclear war, the only people that would have survived would have been those people who had the shelters. Now they look back now and they go, whoo, it was close, and I lived during that age. And I was like, you know what? No one was crazy to build those. We were this close from the Cuban Missile Crisis from going to nuclear war, and those people would have survived.
You know, that's what my realtor friend was telling me, that there's even older nice houses and things in and around Austin where I live that have bunkers from them, and you know, even some built in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and that those are going for premiums now.
Yeah, if you can find, I tell people building a house right now, put a bomb shelter in your backyard. It's the ultimate man cave. It's not going to lose value. Matter of fact, it might be the reason that somebody buys the house. You will not lose the value on the shelter. Matter of fact, they have a 200-year lifespan, the ones I'm building, because they're made out of galvanized pipe. They're engineered to go up to 42 feet deep. I haven't had anybody go 42 feet deep yet, but they're engineered to go that deep. But you can't lose a penny on doing a shelter. Matter of fact, the price that they are right now, if anything does happen, the air filtration systems, they come from Switzerland and they come from or Israel. Those are the two countries that make basically the military authorized air filtration system.
Well, that's the other issue. A lot of these companies I looked at, it's basically death traps. They're fly-by-night. They're not a well-established engineer. I mean, because people keep asking me, where do I get a shelter? You know, we have sponsors approaching us, and I kind of say no because I have to approve something before. So I kind of started my research into this in the last few months, and I just think you're doing a great job there at Atlas Shelters. In the time we've got, in the 5 minutes we've got, sir, any other points or areas you'd like to point out to people?
I'm going to point out that I'm glad you've done some searching. A metal box put in your backyard 2-3 feet underground is not a bomb shelter. There are people that are taking what is considered a tornado shelter, and they're selling them as bomb shelters. What makes a bomb shelter is that it's blast proof, okay? It will meet enough PSI, 8 bars, which is 120 PSI. You want to make sure that the shelter is deep enough and that you have what's considered an NBC air filtration system, okay? And that you have a manual override on your air filtration system. That way you will filter out the nuclear, biological, and chemical agents that are in the air, that if any of those disasters happen, that you can be in your shelter and survive. But a metal box with 2 air pipes sticking out is not a bomb shelter. It's a tornado shelter. So it's sad, but there has been some of this stuff's been on TV and people promote them as bomb shelters. And, you know, it just, I look at it, I was like, oh my God. And people are buying them. They're saying, oh, great, I've got a bomb shelter now. Well, no, what they have is a metal box in their backyard with 2 air pipes sticking out. That's not a bomb shelter. That's a tornado shelter at best. And it'll save you against a tornado. But let me tell you what, it gets so hot in a shelter. If you don't have the amount of soil on top of you, it will become an oven down there. In Dallas, Austin, it's 106 degrees in the summer. You go down and you're only 2 to 3 feet under the surface. You know how hot it gets down in there? You can't live in the thing. One thing I've learned, deeper is better. Go as deep as you can. And if
that's what you were telling me. You're saying I don't, even though it's rock, I'm gonna have to blast, because just piling a bunch of dirt up on it and putting some trees, that'll camouflage it. But then I'm gonna burn up in it. So I guess the answer is blast down to what, 15, 20 feet?
I typically dig a 21-foot hole. I backfill with 12 inches of 3/4 inch crushed rock to create a leach field for the water out of your faucet. I put in the shelter, which is 10-foot diameter. Then I put 10 foot of soil on top of that. Now that 10 foot of soil will be for your gamma radiation and also to keep the shelter cool. The ultimate temperature you want to achieve in your shelter is 65 degrees, which is your constant temperature that's in a wine cellar. So you want to get to where it's 65 in the summer and it's 65 in the winter. Of course, it will vary because you got radiant heat coming off your bodies and from the TV screen. In the winter, the metal can get cold and can transfer through the steel, but you want to try to achieve constant temperature down there. In most cases, you need to wear a sweater down there because it gets a little chilly.
Well, this sounds like a great place to go to play poker.
You know what? I mean, you've seen them on the internet. It's probably nicer in your first apartment. Now, I've got some extravagant people that got me building some really big ones, and I'm not saying they're putting in stripper poles and jacuzzis, but I'm not saying they're doing the same thing as well. So I can pretty much do whatever you want. I mean, if you have a luxurious life above ground, I can give you a luxurious life underground as well, if you got the money to do it. But most of my shelters fall within that $30,000 to $80,000 range, plus the shipping and installation.
Well, okay, how much for installation if you're going to have to blast? I mean, it's limestone behind my house.
Alex, you're getting a big, well, I don't know. Well, I guess you're kind of letting the cat out of the bag, but you're getting a pretty big shelter. Typically, if I hit what's called sandy loam, which is a soft soil that we can dig in with a Cat 325 excavator, we can dig the hole in a day, day and a half, and put in the rock, and we'd be done in 2 days. If they got a blast, you know, it's probably going to run. Where that type of installation with sandy loam runs about $15,000 with the digging, the rock, and a crane coming in to set the bigger shelters. In your case, you're going to probably add $10,000 or $15,000 more if we're going to have to blast our way all the way to the bottom, or we just won't go as deep as 10 foot of topsoil. We may go down to 8. Usually the thermal break is at or below 7 feet. That's when the soil stays a constant temperature.
Well, my issue is I'm planning to do this. I want to go all the way and just have it done right. I don't, you know, I'm not going for luxury, but I am going for it to be big enough to get my family in there, you know, just so it's there. I mean, talk about peace of mind. People are always like, get more life insurance. No. I mean, I just want to be secure. My big issue is how do you camouflage the place where the air filtration comes out and stuff like that?
Well, I don't want to give away all the tricks, but typically the air pipe, you got one air pipe in, you got one air pipe out. The air comes in one side, it comes to an air filtration device, and it goes out the other side. There's ways to camouflage out of artificial trees. In some cases, if I do it in the backyard, I don't want to give away a secret, but I can make one leg be the table base and put a table on top of it. So you look at it, you see a table, but you don't realize the leg underneath it holding the table up is actually the air pipe. And on the other side, I can make it part of a playground. I can make it a barbecue pit. I can disguise them for the backyard storage.
Exactly. So you have it's a play set or a merry-go-round or a swing set, but really it's the air snorkel.
If we need to disguise it, yes. Now, out in the middle of the field, the air pipe sticks up 2 feet. It's got a muffler on the top, so somebody walks up, they can't pour gasoline down it. It can't flood out, so if it floods, the water would have to go up above 2 feet. One thing you don't want people to do, if they're thinking about putting a shelter, make sure that they check the 100-year flood stage and that their land is above that, because otherwise you don't want to have a foot of water sitting on top of your shelter. In case you sprout a leak, they could leak inside. The other thing, they want to know where their water table is. You don't want to dig down 10 feet and hit water, okay? You need to find the highest ground where you can dig down 21 feet and it's not going to backfill with water. Otherwise, you may sprout a leak in the side of your shelter unless you go with a watertight model, which I do have. But most of the ones I do are the galvanized corrugated pipe. And this is what's a neat thing about this. The shelter that I produce most is the only shelter that has been tested with nuclear bombs. Can you believe that?
Wow. How did that happen?
You're saying, how the hell did you do that? Well, Oak Ridge Laboratories back in 1948 to 52, they were setting off nuclear bombs out in the Arizona desert. So what they did is they buried galvanized corrugated pipe, and they crawl down in the pipe, they set off the bombs, and they come out. So they actually felt what's called the ground slap, that when the bomb goes off and you see the ripple go out, that the actual galvanized corrugated pipe, it would actually flex with the earth. That's what's neat about it. It will handle the earthquakes. It will handle the ground slap from a nuclear bomb. So it's actually the best material, size, and shape to put in ground for a bomb shelter. Now, not many shelters can claim that, but that's actually who invented making the shelters out of the galvanized corrugated pipe. All I did was make them luxurious inside, add a decontamination room, laser cut doors, escape tunnels, and all the comforts of home inside.
AtlasSurvivalShelters.com. I'm researching it. I'm getting into it, so I thought I'd have the man, the leading expert on national television, you name it, here to break it down. Ron, thank you so much for the time. I know we have a graphic with your website and the phone number. We should run that one more time here at the end. I know as soon as the show's over, I'll have 10 more questions, but any other points you'd like to make about this?
We'll be talking in person when I come in there in 2 weeks.
All right, yeah, I look forward to having you in studio for the radio show. Ron, thank you so much for spending time with us, buddy.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll say bye to you right after the show. Hold on one moment. Okay, folks, that is it with Ron Hubbard of Atlas Shelters. He was just joining us, AtlasSurvivalShelters.com. And again, the globalists are all digging in, and you see all this survival stuff on TV. I thought, since I've been talking to this guy on the phone for 30 minutes here, an hour there, he's really nice spent all this time. He's got a pretty big company. They've got their shelters out front, the different Cabela's around the country. So I mean, he's a pretty big deal. And he was really kind of hard to get on the radio or here on the TV. He'll talk to you plenty, there in person. But we were just glad to be able to get him here on with us today as I start to investigate this more. Certainly, I hope that you'll investigate it and tell me what you think about it as well. But this company looks like the best out there, bar none. Well, great job to the crew and great job to the folks doing the news portion earlier. That's it for this Monday edition. Lord willing, I will see you back here tomorrow with InfoWars Nightly News and on the syndicated radio show with the Tuesday edition.